Keith asked me if I wanted to do a presentation or a workshop, and at first I couldn't imagine on what, but then I realized that I have actually been thinking about this for a really long time, and sometimes when you think about something for a really long time, is like the layers, you like have it all, and like you're getting a big picture of how things fit together. So the passion for this comes from, or the inspiration for this comes from, I came across this illness-wellness continuum. And when I saw it, first of all, I went, okay, Donna, you are a geek. Because to get so excited, like a little high almost over the concept, because it's something that I was obsessed with. And like when you're in a wellness, if you're a wellness teacher or a practitioner.
And Donna, are you a wellness teacher and practitioner?
I am, I guess, yes.
Out of Georgia, right? Because the Georgian accent's really strong.
New Jersey.
After she swore it.
And so it's like, wow, this sums up what I try to tell people and how I want to live my life. And so I don't know how well you can see this, but I also sent it in the, I don't know if it was a Facebook chat or Telegraph chat for this retreat. An attachment, and then Michelle has some paper copies if you really wanted to see it more clearly. And I didn't know if I'd have internet, so I said, let me just draw the thing. But it's basically that, and this was designed in originally 1977 by a medical doctor. And he's basically trying to help people understand it's not, are you well or not, are you healthy or not? It's something that takes an awareness and an intention and a commitment to where you want to be on there. And so if you think of how most people talk about wellness, the middle is where the doctor says you're fine and you have no symptoms. And when you hear that, you're like, oh, that's unacceptable. And I know that that's probably true for everyone here because you're here, right? So I try to be somewhere in here. At different points you might move around, where you're really working at learning and applying what you know about wellness. And that's all kinds of things, right? Maybe whatever holistic things you're into. But I feel like for the people that are here, if anything here, it's such a slippery slope that way, and they make it sound like it's random. And so what's interesting is this man who did this wasn't even thinking of energy, right? We have that amazing window in way before anything gets here, because before something becomes physical, there's an energetic aspect of it. Many of us have studied with Angel-Geschichte and Keith Coley, and we can work on our energy system. And I actually don't even know how many people here are practitioners or clients of a practitioner or students, currently students. But I think to some degree, hopefully everyone knows that you can change your energy field and deal with things as things come up in life. So the other thing about this is this is going to be like a 3-day thing. It's meant to be not me as an expert. It's really a sharing and a discussion and very casual. And what we're going to do today, and I did post this on that group, day 1, day 2, day 3. I need water. We're going to talk about what wellness would look like in the ideal life circumstance where you had the option to have your life in balance at all times, and what that could look like. And then we're going to talk about where our energy comes from when we have all those options on the table, and how it's spent. And then tomorrow we're going to think about and reflect on our own lives and how your life force comes in and how it's spent. So we can be really reflecting on maybe more choices that we could have. So this is like a time for a commercial while I change the paper, if you want to talk quietly amongst yourselves.
Do you need help, Donna?
I didn't. No, actually, I got that fixed, but it could be. Here, because I keep something that is going to move again. Okay. All right.
Mom, where'd you put the cars? Oh, here.
I'm just going to try to take this further down. Here.
This is kite flying 101.
Very a wing right there.
One of the few times where it's actually been cooler, seemed cooler down here than up in the mountains.
Amazing in the pavilion, you get the breeze and everything.
Yeah. Looks like I figured this all out, doesn't it? Okay. On that, I could. All right. Okay, I'll see about that.
I need to stand here a little bit. Sit here and hold it.
Okay,
This is
so,
white on white. Yes.
So the way you spot her feet was out of we're gonna take this.
all right, so now we're going to talk about what would it look like if we had all options for a healthy, I don't like the word health, but healthy, wellness. All of our resources were available to us. What would that look like? You guys can just throw out suggestions.
Are you talking about like herbal medicine, energy
Well, I guess I'm
medicine?
starting from the basics of survival,
Oh, like healthy food
like
source.
access to the best quality food.
Yeah, food and water, food and water.
Thank you, Pete Foley.
The wind is picking up.
Okay,
Quality sleep.
quality sleep.
Good water.
Plain water.
Plain water.
There.
Air.
Oh, yes, air. Hygiene.
Hygiene. That's always nice. I hope spelling doesn't count on that.
Phonetics.
We know what you meant. We don't use that side of our name as much.
People who are around you, what kind of people are around you, is their energy to affect you?
People,
Say that.
safety.
Environment,
I would say a safe place to live amongst
Yeah,
people you
safe,
feel
yeah.
safe.
yeah.
Environment.
Yeah, that's another word for it, that would work.
We're gonna put them
I went the
together.
long way around the barn.
All encompassing.
All encompassing.
Okay,
Nature. Nature.
I think so I don't run out of paper, I'm going up here. Okay,
Access to the sun's energy.
can I put that with nature?
Yeah. Low level noise.
We want low level noise or?
Absolutely.
Do we need noise at a low level or we don't want high noise?
No, you need at low level.
Yeah, I'll give you an example. We lived out on the peninsula in Washington, right? I mean, beautiful paradise. Until the growlers came over. These huge jets that would launch and they would ripple and run through the sky and would destroy that moment of peacefulness. There, no, Bill, no.
Yeah.
Or you could be like me and live by the rocket pipes.
Boom!
All
So
the time.
Wow.
if we don't have any noise, is that not good for us?
I prefer noises of nature only if I can have it. Like if I hear
Okay.
cars, I'm on top of a mountain, I'm like, oh,
Okay.
There's such a thing as noise pollution.
So I think these are the basics that people need for health.
Exercise.
Okay.
What is that?
Yeah.
gonna say that in not so much in my holistic community, well, maybe even some of them, but not in this community, but people have always used that term self-care, and I sometimes think they're just not talking about what I'm thinking about.
Most of the time they say that self-care is doing their fingernails and doing their hair.
Thank
There you go.
you.
There
And who's that? Well, that could be for them. That's an okay thing to do. So they are. So people sometimes have so much stress in their lives, and self-care is like the one massage once a month, right? Not enough.
Not enough, that's what's up
Hey,
there.
Barbara, I didn't get to hug you.
And okay, Barbara, you come as often as you can, or if you can do, if you can make.
So, yeah, like self-care should be the moment to moment, just as the illness wellness continuum is like kind of checking in moment to moment. Not like crazy every moment, but like daily, throughout the day. When something happens that you don't feel good, it's okay to take a minute and check in. I think that's self-care, and then having a meter for where's your stress level and addressing it.
I can't see very well. Is sleeping up there?
It is.
That should be number one.
You think so? I think safety. If you're not going to sleep, you may not have hygiene or clean water. You're going to be in a fight or flight continuously.
Oh, yes.
So there's other things that we can do for ourselves that are kind of like, but I think of it as being with yourself. Taking time to like stop everything, shut off the chit chat in the brain, and be with yourself. So we could elaborate on a lot of things, but that might differ for everyone, right? Massage, meditation, a walk in nature. And there's so many people. And honestly, when I talk about this, we're talking about the ideal scenario. And everyone's life is different. Some lives are not allowing for a certain level of freedom. So I just want to acknowledge that because my own life in the past was a little spinning out of control at times because we have responsibilities to other people. We may not have the resources. But I guess this whole workshop, the 3 days, I'm hoping that even within that, you start to examine choices, and maybe on day 3 we brainstorm together. People were open to that, and if they want to share their stories. Okay, so now we're going to talk about where do we get our energy from, because this whole talk is about life force budgeting, basically. Not to squander it. So everyone here knows Pengu Shingon?
Anybody not know it?
It's Pongu. Is that how we say it?
Pungu.
Because I know I probably say it. How it's
I can't say that I know it. So,
Did you learn it?
She saw me doing
Yeah.
it.
Okay. But you know what I'm talking about.
yes.
Yeah.
So we all understand cultivating life force. Now, when you think about where does our energy come from, it comes from other places too. I'm hoping you chime in on that. Like, all right. Actually, I'm going to tell you something that I learned from Keith, which I do in my vegetable garden. I can feel the energy of my food. And I remember Keith saying once he goes to the store and he doesn't buy it if he doesn't feel the life force in the food. So you eat food that, everybody talks about the least processed, and that's great. It's a very good rule of thumb. But if you can understand life force, you can understand that totally differently. And so many people are just about ingredients, right? So, of course, we cultivate. There's life force in the food that we take in. But then there is an aspect of the energy that our body has to work with, which again I learned from Keith Coley, is that you're born with a certain amount of energy and you think about it as something that you use as a savings account that has to last through your life. And then there's the stuff you acquire through almost, if we think about healthy lifestyle choices, that's like even the non-energy people understand that, right? So that would be like your acquired energy, And that's what you want, how you want to try to live your life, so you don't have to use up that savings account, right? But then we have this other tool with Honggu Shenggong. Is that better? I'm on video, so it's doing good.
I'm editing this little clip out and I'm playing this thing to death online.
We're streaming right now on YouTube.
I'm probably turning colors now, but
It's
Okay.
pretty.
so other than life force, cultivating, and what we were born with, does movement add to life force?
Sure.
Okay, so that's not really a question I'd ever asked, but
To a degree.
or is it just saving what you have?
No, I mean, if you're totally sedentary, you're not keeping the machine moving and the cultivation happening. There's a line for each person on what is enough and too much. It's like, was running bad? No, not necessarily. Running past a certain point, number of miles per week, could be not so good for you, but could be great for you, depending on your makeup and so on.
So if you didn't cultivate with Pandu Chudong and you weren't necessarily eating a great diet, you would feel like you have more life force.
Yeah, I mean, look what, people who move in general, and we used to move, right, because you had to. You weren't going to keep surviving if you didn't do certain tasks in the day to keep fresh water, keep the food coming, make sure your place of shelter was complete and whole, and we had to do these things. And so movement was just a part of life where you didn't live. And now we have to create it. I remember Back to the Future, there was the third one, and he's going back to the Wild Wild West, and they're like, "What you wearing there, boy?" He goes, "They're running shoes." "Running shoes? You gonna go running on purpose?" Creating places to go exercise. Like, what are you doing? You work enough anyway. So yeah, you gotta move a certain degree because we've always done it, for health. Commercial break over.
So what was I else I was going to say? There's something else I wanted to say. Okay, so the other part of that movement that I always think of is if you don't move, your lymph doesn't move.
Yeah.
Your muscles don't work, and so you're going to then start using up either your acquired or your cultivated so there's that, right? Oh, I know what I was going to say. Okay, so we all know what life force is from Chi.
That which animates you?
Okay, that's an important thing. Maybe you should talk about that.
No, it's just that's what animates
All
everything.
right. Okay, so there's energy. I studied biochemistry in college, and they talk about ATP that moves your muscles,
Yeah.
right? But then there's another kind of chi, the chi life force. In some practice, they call it prana. It's energy that moves through meridians, which are your pathways. Familiar with that term? And when I'll just give you my my elevator speech on the energy field. So we all have an energy field. It surrounds and permeates our body. It speaks to every cell, organ, tissue, and allows all of them to communicate with each other. So Bruce Lipton talked about 7 trillion cells in your body, and 7 trillion cells are working as a community for you. And the rest of my elevator speech is talking about how life happens, and then with that comes impacts to that wonderful flow and communication system. And so there's 2 things we need to keep the energy system healthy, and that's enough energy to do what it needs to do, to feed the organs, and to create that flow. So it's enough, and then it's the quality. Is the energy going where it needs to go, or is it stagnant, blockages, distorted flow? And that could be within the meridian pathway or within the organs or even on a cellular level. So this is really about looking at having the healthiest energy field possible as a way to, if you think of that illness-wellness continuum, keeping your body well before something becomes a chronic problem, either energetically, chronic or physical or mental or emotional. And one of the inspirations for this is there's a lot of people that just keep cultivating life force. They learn the Pangu Qigong, or maybe there's other things that they learn, and they do that, but they're not thinking about how they're wasting energy and choices they make in daily life. So I was hoping to give you the big picture of how all these pieces fit together, so people could apply it to their own lives and wellness, and reflect, and if they have the skills to work on themselves, or even study with Keith or Angel, or work with a practitioner like myself who can go in and feel the blockages in the energy flow. What meridian is not working? What organ is like screaming for help? And what I think is really cool is when I talk to people about this, I'm like, well, Chinese medicine, you can correct me if I'm incorrect. I'm glad you're my helper.
I'm listening. I'm holding your paper.
Chinese medicine in this country is like acupuncture and herbs, right? That's what people understand. But I read Paul Fraser's book, and he talks about medical Qigong and people who would train themselves by cultivating and build their life force and then create the skills where they can connect, feel their own energy and what needs to be addressed, and then connect with other people's energy and feel where the blockages are, where the flow needs better. Actually feel the emotion. That's the other aspect that you could learn in Angel and Keith's classes is the energy can be blocked because there's an emotional problem, and each organ has an emotional, a couple different emotional affiliations, right? But when you work with someone who does this medical Qigong, they're building their energy with Qigong, and they can actually give you like an energy tune-up kind of thing and make sure you're back to that 70 trillion cells all communicating. And then the other thing I sometimes do with my clients or the people I teach Pangu Qigong to is, can you raise your hands if you can feel another person's life force? So I know not all of us are there. Okay. So I'll still, because maybe I didn't really see how many hands are down. But I'll tell my clients who don't understand what I'm talking about, or they don't realize how low their life force is. So the other reason to tell you this is you can tell your clients this. And any aspect of what I talk about is maybe an inspiration to use with your clients. So I'll say, okay, I want you to hold your hands like this. Do you feel, and you bring them closer together or further apart, what do you feel, right? And they often will feel a tingling and some feel nothing. Then I'll say, I want you to feel Master O's energy in your hands. And move your hands apart until you just feel it. And they're usually that person, if they feel it, they're going like this. And they're like, okay, because they don't have a frame of reference to know what that means. Mm-hmm. And then I say, now I want you to feel mine. And I do at least 2 hours of Pangu Qigong a day, because I don't know if it's a lucky or a curse, but I am a practitioner in Keith and Angel's Cultivate Life Force healthcare system, and I know a lot of you people are either practitioners or members within it. So I ask them then feel mine, and so their hands are out here for Master O, and then I'm usually somewhere here. And then I say, okay, and they're like, okay, and I go, and that's different. And it's usually people that are learning the Pangu Qigong, and they're going to learn about Master O, who developed it. Then I say, now I want you to feel your own, and they're going like this, 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 and that's why we're here today. But it's great, because they didn't know you could feel life force, and then they're learning what I do when I can feel someone else's life force. And now and then, I will encounter someone who I think needs my help, or they're not sure, or they're so new to them, and I go, you don't have a lot of life force, and you're trying to overcome these problems, and you need to put some force behind it. So anyway, the take-home message for these 3 days will be we don't want to squander our life force. We want to be intentional about it. So now we're going to talk. So is there anything else? Do Your Keith assistant. We have Peng and Qigong or cultivation methods. Others. I'm sure there must be others.
Tai Chi Chuan. I mean, there's thousands of forms of Qigong, just to let you know. It's not like we're saying that Peng Qigong is the only game out there. It's not. It's just the reason I've stuck with it for 18 years is because it was one of the easiest things I know to do. And you get so much return for your investment of time compared to other things. I mean, I have a lot of people come to me and go, oh, have you tried this? Have you seen this? And I always go back to the person who's carrying the torch for that particular method at this point in time, who's the leader of that, who's carried the lineage at this point, and then what do their members feel like? And to Donna's point, I adopted Donna's teaching people the method of feeling someone's energy between your hands. It's brilliant, because I never really understood how to teach it to people. I just did it. And so when you feel different things in life, different people in life, you can measure, do I want to do this supposed cultivating tool? Do I want to use this? Feel the followers of it. You've done it on a regular basis. Feel the person who, again, is carrying the torch for that generation. And do you feel that they're actually able to do that? And you can do more than just, like, well, I can't feel it between my hands. I'm not able to do that yet. I haven't developed that skill. Okay, just observe them. What do you feel from them? Use your gut. What's your gut tell you? So there's a lot of ways to cultivate, but we don't have much time in life. It's the information age, right? So you've got to do things that are the most impactful on your life for the time that you have. And so I want to put that out there because you're going to hear about Peng Qigong. And I want you to know there's a reason why when we talk about that. But I mean, I want to also, to her point, these other things we've mentioned up here, you can't overcome all of these other things by just doing Peng Qigong. They're all, as I'm sure you're going to bring through these next 2 or 3 days, how important these other things are as well. Mm-hmm. So that's why we're here doing this particular part.
It's true. So did I miss anything? We have food and movement and Peng Qigong.
I mean,
the other things are not like you don't want to use up what you have, but like as far as what comes in.
What you can cultivate, yeah. I mean, those are great. I mean, some people are doing, sun gazing. It's break of dawn, right, when it's safe, in the middle of the day, and you're able to do some sun gazing, and you can draw an energy that way.
Oh, and the earth. Let's not forget about the earth.
And if you want to get really interesting, there are people now who are privately, hopefully, subjecting their nether regions to sunlight too, because they're like, you don't ever do that. Mm-hmm. When do your nether regions ever see sunlight? So now there's this big sweeping movement to shed your drawers and expose yourself to the sun. It's a thing.
So now we're going to talk about how we use our energy we're still talking about the ideal scenario, right? So today is all about if we could have our lives completely in our control. And some of us are lucky enough to have a large amount of our life like that, and some of us less so.
Wouldn't meditation be a way to cultivate?
Yeah, I think.
Energy.
For cultivating.
10 minute a day practice.
True.
It really depends, okay? I mean, when you're talking about meditation, for most people, it feels like to me, it's just my take on it, it's often a great way to conserve energy. Because it's calming everything down, the nervous system's calming down, your respiration rate, everything's going right into a more dormant state. So you're conserving, much like you do when you sleep. If the form was created to cultivate, and it's been kept true through the generations, assuming it's older, it's possible that it's also cultivating chi. But what I find in most people are like, I do 2 or 3 hours of meditation a day. And I'm feeling going, good grief. Mm-hmm. That's not working for cultivation for you. So just my experience, a few people I've encountered in life and the few places I've lived, not so much. Not so much.
I think of meditation as the parasympathetic response. So instead of your cells in this like walled off kind of protective, now everything's opened up and you can have flow. And parasympathetic is your healing response. So when you're in a stress response, that is not a healing response. There's communication, the body is down, movement in terms of like letting go of emotions, thoughts, and just physically in the tissues, right? So how does that, so that's a huge thing.
Receptivity,
Okay, so now we spend our life force energy in the ideal scenario. I could start us off. Should I start us off? I just think running our organs, running our body. I'm one of these people where I do what it calls for, and that's sitting on the floor right now.
I'm gonna miss that movie.
I do what's called for
Oh, called.
in the moment. Okay.
What does that mean? You're talking about how we spend our energy, right?
So the energy, like, okay, so we have this life force, and what is the purpose of it,
Okay.
right? What does it do for us?
I was thinking it was how we use it. It's not effective. Okay.
That's gonna be tomorrow.
Oh, all right.
I figured I'd start by like understanding how the system could be beautiful and perfect, but it's not because we're all living and we're interacting with people and we have our stresses and demands on us. And it's part of the big picture, right?
I got it.
This is the baseline, I guess. Ooh, look at this guy.
There.
He went swimming.
Dog.
Keith, running our organs.
As far as what
How else do we spend our energy? I guess dealing with our stresses.
Well, the big one we use is, we deal with our stressors. It's the spinning of the mind. We use up so much energy spinning of the mind. We're looping, emotional loops, mental looping, absorbing huge amounts of information in this age where it's everywhere and not unplugging. Those things, we use up so much of that. That's why all the years I'm like, Maestro, what can I do to possibly, navigate this better? Oh, be more calm. I'm like, you said that last time. But it's true. I mean, if you're more calm, you're not spinning the wheels. And we chew up so much of it in thinking, because it's digestion. You're digesting, whether you're eating, whether you're reading something, listening to something, you are digesting.
So normal information processing, even in the ideal scenario, but that's true for the emotions, right?
Absolutely.
Does movement use up life force?
Yeah, I mean, again, if you exceed what your body is built and able to handle, you're going to put yourself in a deficit, thinking maybe you're doing something good for yourself. It could be anything.
But normal movement?
No, I mean, normal everyday movement. Good stuff.
See, that's why this is a casual discussion. I think the normal planning, I feel like planning, executing, trying to reflect on your life and how you want it to look, that could be. But that's part of thinking, right?
Mm-hmm.
About interacting with other people.
Well, all right.
That might be.
It'd be taxing.
Even if it's positive and it's still the ideal scenario.
Holland, what'd you say?
I was gonna say, interacting with other people, but I spend a lot of energy making sure my children are okay.
Yeah.
The safety aspect of my kids.
Right.
Making sure, like, dropping them off at school is like one of the most.
So like planning and scheduling, I think even when it's something good, right? I feel like sometimes I don't have a little extra ability to put something fun on the calendar, right? So even there, right? Even if you have the ideal scenario, then your life force is going toward what would you being intentional in what you want that to look like. You have to do something to make it happen, right?
And I think it's just not living in the present, you're living in the past or the future.
Absolutely. Dead on.
Planning. Our responsibilities, how would that be? So that's a huge response. I'm sorry about my handwriting. Any more?
Absorbing energy from people.
Doing things you don't want to do. For others. Or just in general.
Yeah.
So I guess that's where it's like, and we'll be talking more about that. In the ideal scenario, you don't have to.
Mm-hmm.
And that has to be one of the choices that we have in life.
Yeah.
So boundaries.
Boundaries. Yeah, so knowing what they are is going to take some life force. That is part of thinking. But then you have to change your behavior a little bit. And that's should be part of the ideal life scenario.
Yeah.
If it, or you won't have an ideal life scenario. I can't really think of any others.
Having to make decisions. That's a big.
Okay, how about I put that with info processing and decisions? Is that okay?
Yeah.
Or
Big one.
separate?
Limbo's a big one.
Yep. Sucks the energy right out of you. Makes it hard to climb out.
I guess there's a lot of things that fall under responsibilities. Like I feel like maintaining your home and yourself.
I would add to that, trying to undo the impact of tribal assaults, as in, if you are encoded as a child with very negative things, trying to undo that takes tremendous energy and awareness in the world and how you relate to others, undoing the harm you've caused, and also to cherish what you've learned and move forward with in positive, now I'm talking positive energies. So I would add to that, learning to reduce harm, emotional harm.
Okay, so I agree with that, and I think that falls under tomorrow because the ideal world doesn't have that. The ideal scenario that doesn't really exist for any of us,
Okay.
right? But
We all have
certainly
some of it.
learning who we want to be.
Yes.
Or
Yes,
even
that would- yes.
relearning.
Relearning
Like you've learned
is-
things
yes.
one way for all these years, and now at this age you're finding out
Yeah.
it's not quite that way, and you have to relearn it. So you actually have to unlearn what you learned and then relearn, and that takes a lot of work.
And I'm going to add changing behavior.
Yes.
That is the
Yes.
hard, really hard part.
And then guess what? The people around you don't like you no more.
Yeah, absolutely.
Including your tribe. They don't
Yeah,
like
like,
you.
what's wrong with you?
Yeah,
Why are you so
exactly.
different?
Let me go find my
Speaking
people, thank you.
Relationships takes a lot of energy.
Oh, I would argue they maybe take
Most.
most.
Yeah, but not in the ideal thing, because then everyone's communicating nicely. I know it's like, this is a make-believe thing that we're doing here.
But you know, relationship with yourself, relationship with other, relationships with the world. I mean,
It's all about
Relationship
relationships.
with the
Yes.
universe,
yeah,
higher
but you find
power.
out sometimes you get on your own nerve.
Yes.
Can you tell us
Yes,
more
you
about
can.
that? I love that. As a concept. That's when your thoughts have been spinning out of control.
She is dizzy.
So tomorrow I'm hoping that we can actually have the same kind of fun and discussion and talk about our own lives. But I think what I thought I would do is to trickle information over the 3-day period, and I'm going to put on this group chat some of the questions I have come up with to help you guys, if you want to do it over like night till tomorrow or in our group tomorrow. Think about the energy that's coming in and the energy and how you're spending it. And if you wanted to and you could have some clarity on it, what percent is coming in of the different things and what percent is being spent. For example, if you're mostly, all right, financial stresses, that's a real thing. And what I think is true, is some stress in general actually, is that when you're at a super amount of chronic stress, you can only think through the day. Just got to get through the day, every day. But you don't have the ability to step back and brainstorm for solutions. Because that takes the ability to like calm the panic to think, right? But finances is a real thing. That could be where 75% of your energy is going, or being, your life force is being sucked away. And for that person, the answer is not keep cultivating. Well, yes, it could, because it'll calm your nervous system, but it's not going to help with your finances. You kind of really need an advisor or a vacation, so you can just sit and like you can't afford a vacation, so never mind. But you know what I'm saying? Like, you need answers. That's a real thing. So I'm just thinking for each of us, the story might be different. Like, all right, and actually, I don't know what my timing is in. You said not to worry about it, but I'm just going to share a little bit about my own personal story, even though we're like at the end. It's a funny time to do it. And I'm just going to get extremely honest, all right? So I was raised in a very not good home life. And then I married a man. All right, so I had trauma in my house growing up. Trauma, when you want to talk about where your energy is going, if you haven't resolved old trauma, and that's one of the things I focus on in my practice. And most people don't realize how that's connected to physical chronic health conditions. Because of how it affects your nervous system and then your immune system and your mental health. But, so I was raised in a home with trauma. I married a man who was raised in a house with, abuse. And then we had 3 children that had some developmental disabilities. Not on the autistic spectrum, but really sensory processing, somewhere in that. People might not know it if they saw learning challenges. And my relationship with my husband wasn't good. He was supportive, but he was emotionally not capable of being a good parent and being a team player. And he was never abusive to me, but he was emotionally checked out. And at that point, it was like my stress was like 24/7 maximum. I didn't really realize my stress level because it was living it, right? If you're living it, where's the part where you go, this isn't sustainable. This isn't, right? And I always wanted to help my kids with their disabilities. That wellness continuum, I was applying that to them, and I'm like, I want this fixed yesterday. That's how I'm going to proceed. So if there was something new to learn about, something I could try, and there was 3 of them, not super close in age, but within 5 years. And so then professional counseling, getting, working with my husband and myself to understand our trauma and how that's affected us and how we are communicating, and doing I got involved in Nest Health as holistic wellness and nutrition, and then Nest Health, and then studying with Keith. But my life now is that I have all the choices on the table. My kids they still have some problems, but I can have a healthy separation between me and them, right? Because they're 24, 26, and 29, and I support them and help them. But I'm not obsessed with it. And if they make choices that I'm worried about their future, I'm going to just worry about my own choices for myself and my life, and they're going to have to take care of theirs. But I've evolved to that. But I used to be mentally ill, maybe. I don't know, called mentally ill. I remember, getting a little off here, but the neighbor checked into a hospital and was having a nervous breakdown, and I said, that's a cop-out. I don't have time for a nervous breakdown, or I would have had one quite some time ago. And obviously, it's a choice, but I think when I was reading a book on the special needs child, and it was emotional, intellectual, and social development, and I realized that everything in that book, I was like halfway through the book, and I was like, I'm having a nervous breakdown right now, and I deserve it. So I called my therapist, and I called my husband at work, and said, I've made a reservation at a hotel. I'm spending the night there. But what I realized is all the work I've been doing with my kids, that I was intuitively trying to figure out what they needed. So when you're working with someone on the spectrum, and you're trying to make neurological changes, sometimes you just need to get to the very right conversation or challenge or thing for them to understand a concept, and then they are at another place. And what I was doing is intuitively trying to figure out what they needed. with play therapy and some things that I was reading, but like I'm like, wow. To like have an expert write a book and feel like you're figuring it out on your own is like, and then realizing how much that's taken out of you and what you've been through because you're seeing all your life or all of their life, right? You're like, wow, this has been hard. And because if you don't reflect to see how hard it is, you're not thinking about yourself. So I guess I just want to acknowledge that everyone here and everyone in the whole park, they have different lives. So I don't want to ever make it sound like I'm not understanding. And I never, when I talk to clients or anyone, I don't ever want to minimize what other people's life experience